has been in Russell has been in hot pursuit on pushing the possibilities of light painting for the past 5 years and doesn't show any signs of stopping. During that time span, he has given a TEDx talk, appeared on the Japanese TV show Tokudane,
close.
Tokudane, and obtained a Guinness World Record. And we never found out what that Guinness World Record.
You just muted yourself.
Unmute. Okay. So we got to find out what this Guinness World Record is. He is known for his light painting portraits and drone work creating light painting images among the stars. So take it away, Russell.
Cool. Just get it out of the way so you guys know, because it's not in the presentation. My Guinness World Record is for the world's largest light painting done by UAV or drone. I just said it if there wasn't one before that. And so I was like, oh, why not? This could be a cool thing to have. Totally beatable, not hard to beat. I made it that way on purpose. But yeah, so that's what it's for.
Very cool. Okay, everybody, if you could turn off your video just so that we can save bandwidth.
Okay. So, and am I spotlighted right now?
You are, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks good, Russell.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure. Because I can't tell on my Zoom thing. So anywho, all right. So light painting. I was just going to go through the same thing that I did before. Sorry, it's a repeat. So most of the time when we think about light painting, we have car trails like this or airplane trails. And the kind that I like to do is more along these lines where you're using different tools that you light by flashlights, or, really any other kind of source of light that's not from something that you're not controlling. So what do you need to light paint? You need a camera, you need tripod, and you need lights. Those are the three main things that you've got to have. This is an example of one of the first light paintings done by Etienne Jules Manet and Georges Demey, and it's called The Pathological Walk from the Front. And he basically tied incandescent light bulbs to the joints of an assistant, and it came out with this image. And then this is another one created by the same duo where they just took a white ball on the end of a black stick, and using the reflected light, they wrote out a name on the black background. So before we get started, let me hide this little window. Light painting takes a lot of patience. It's unlikely you're going to nail it, your shot on your first try. I don't nail it all the time, ever, so it's fine. It's easy to start, difficult to master, just like piano. So don't get frustrated if you don't crush it even after a whole night. Oftentimes, just like Photoshop, light painting builds in layers. So first you'll get your exposure, and then you'll try this tool, and then you'll add this tool, and it's all about just taking it in. And it's kind of like an unofficial rule. Light painters, we share everything that we know just because we want to grow the community as much as we can and share our love of light painting. Anything you learn, if possible, just give credit to who you learned it from. Most light painters, we don't make any money off of what we do. It's just, we just love it so much. So credit is all we got. And then contrary to popular belief, you don't need to be silent when light painting. It doesn't affect the image, but it's just when you start, it's just dead silent. And there's no reason to be. And it's just really funny. So this image, this was basically I think you're seeing it sped up, but more or less this is real time. This is with the Olympus Live composite mode. And I have my drone drawing these flowers in the sky. And so how Olympus Live composite works is Panasonic has this and Olympus has this. And basically you first set your exposure for your scene, and then that scene will never overexpose. And then once you have that set, it becomes like a base plate for you to then put any kind of lighting you want on top of that. So you'll never overexpose your scene, but you could potentially overexpose the whole thing if you do too many bright lights in it, and then it kind of screws up everything. But it's a really awesome learning tool because you can kind of see what you're doing and how you can make adjustments. So we're going to talk about tripods. Pretty much any tripod's good. I use a Peak Design tripod. It's really lightweight. I really like it a lot. But really, if having a heavy duty tripod is going to be helpful just in case somebody kicks it. And then because you're in the dark, something that's really useful to do is to get those little glow in the dark wristbands that you can get at like the dollar store and put those at the feet of your tripod so that people can see it in the dark. Just always just good to not hit people's tripods if you can. Wireless triggers. So I have a couple on me right now. So we have the Power Sync 16 to 80, and I'll make my screen a little bigger here. So these are my favorite triggers. What's really nice about them is they can not only be paired to other people's triggers, they're pretty rugged, I drop these things all the time, and they can connect up to 700 feet. So it gives you some distance, and they're pretty reliable. Start an exposure and then end an exposure. You just click it on, click it again. And then what I like to do is I Velcro on the back of this. And then I just have this little wrist wrap that I bought from Walmart. What you can do is, because you have that Velcro on there, a lot of the times you have tools and all sorts of stuff, but now I can just put this on my wrist and I won't lose it. I know where it is because it's pretty often you lose stuff in the dark. So it's super useful to have this just there. So those are kind of expensive though. I think they run for like $90 or something for a pair of them. So they can be kind of expensive, but for me, they're worth it. If you don't want to use those, we have the Younguo remotes. You can get these off of Amazon. They cost like $20 for a pair, maybe 30. These are a little different though, because with these, they don't work click on, click off. These you have to hold down. And then as soon as you let go, it ends the photo. So it starts and then ends. So depending on what you're doing, it could be useful. I like to do lots of complicated stuff where I need two hands. So unless you're doing stuff with tubes, which we're going to get into in a little bit, I don't necessarily recommend these. And of course, you always have your phone app and you can use those. They're not like the best, but they work. All right. The first brand is called, these are PowerSync 16-80. That's what these are. I get them on B&H. All right. So now we're gonna get into flashlights. I have this flashlight somewhere. I don't know where it is right now, but it's great. So this flashlight was made by light painters for light painters. Having that 1200 lumens, the 8 different brightness levels, different strobe, constant strobes, mind you, which is really important. I mean, waterproof. Has a different memory in it. Like, it's super great for a light painting tool. Having that up to 1200 lumens on the brightness level is really important. And then the single flash mode is really good too if you want to light somebody really quick. Now we have the color shine. Okay, so this is the color shine. This flashlight right here, and I'm going to, so useful that I can do this. So this is the color shine. Now you can get these off Amazon. They are a budget color change flashlight. Like, they work, right? We can see the colors here, and that's fine, but they're just not that reliable. If you drop it, it might just get stuck on red, and that sucks. And for $36, that's annoying. Said I can trigger using your phone app. Does the Olympus OMD end up having the ability to display your image while you're triggering your camera? Yes. So basically, I don't like to use my my trigger for the Olympus because sometimes because you have to click it once to do your base plate and then click it again to start your exposure. And having to remember how many clicks I did is very confusing. So I generally don't use it, but because the way that the base plate is, if I'm just trying to do something like straight in the dark, I just click it once, get a really quick exposure that's just blackness. And then I just click it again, and then I don't have to worry about it because I know it'll never overexpose my environment. So I don't really worry about using a trigger with an Olympus. So yeah, these are the color shines. They're okay if you want to try some stuff with color. Otherwise, whatever. We have a better alternative now. So next up we have is the Falamob 18650. This is a flashlight that Eric Pauret recommends, and he's the guy that got me started in light painting. And what's great about it is that it's pretty cheap and it does a good job at 960 lumens for the price. For $35, like, it's pretty good. It has 5 different brightness modes, which is amazing. It has that constant strobe, and you'll see why the constant strobe is important in a little bit. And you can get it off Amazon or lightpaintingtubes.com. It is a great flashlight for a beginner. The only thing to pay attention to is that because it's a pretty small flashlight, the batteries, it can get kind of hot. So just be aware of that. Maybe like wear a glove or two if you can't, because it gets pretty toasty. Great if you're in the cold. So just be careful of that. Otherwise, it's fantastic flashlight. Next up, we have like my favorite flashlight, the RGB Critter. And let me take this off the blade real quick. So this is the RGB Critter. And what's dope about it, so this is a color change flashlight, okay? And I love this thing because of really all the things that are listed on there. You can change the brightness, you can change the strobe speed, you can have preset color effects. Like I can change this to all sorts of different things. I can choose different colors. I'm going to back out of this real quick and get back to white. Oh, we're on strobe mode. That's fun. But you can see that I can change all the different colors here, which is super useful. And then if you want to have it be a constant strobe like I have, it's great. It's sound reactive and movement reactive. So if you want to paint to music, or if you want to paint to your movements and what that's going to create and make the colors change, you can do that because it was also made for like flow artists or people who, go to raves and have the whips and stuff. So it's absolutely amazing flashlight. I am sponsored by these people, but like if it's good, I'm all about the good tools. So like if it's not a good tool, I don't want to be sponsored by it, sort of deal. It's hands down the best color change thing on flashlight in the market, and they're always coming out with new stuff. And I absolutely love these things. They're just absolutely fantastic. So if you want to get like a good color change that you never are going to get out of or change from because they're always coming up with new stuff, you want to get one of those. And here are some examples that I created with this flashlight with the different tools. And it's, I didn't have to do much editing outside of what you see. The colors are that good. So now we're going to get into tubes. And this is a circle. Now, mind you, with light painting, like I don't do Photoshop, right? This is pretty much what you get out of camera because it's more fun that way. So tubes. So this is a tube. I'm going to make it a little bigger so you can see. All right. So this is a tube, and you can get these from Home Depot or Lowe's, and they're just they're called fluorescent safety tubes or tube covers. So these just go over fluorescent lights. And we have these because in case that fluorescent light breaks, it shatters inside of this plastic tube and it keeps the glass in there, but they're super good for light painting. So right now I have some baking paper in this one, and that's going to allow it to be white. And then all you're going to need is a flashlight, like one of the ones like that follow mob that we talked about earlier. And you have your light painting tube. It's like a budget lightsaber, pretty much. You can just beat the crap out of it. It costs $4, so they're not expensive. And they're super great. Before Eric started to sell his own tubes, like we all just made our own tubes and would find like really big gels if we could. So I have a gel out here. And here we go. So you can see that this is just your typical gel. It's just 4 feet long. You can buy them off lightpaintingtubes.com. That's the easiest way instead of buying a whole roll. And you have an orange tube. But this one, we generally find that for most things, whites, oranges, and like yellow sometimes generally work the best, but not always, as we also have holographic tubes. And this is just holographic paper. And you can just buy, I've bought stuff at Michael's. Let's see if we can get the exposure right. Kind of like this is a rainbow tube. You can kind of see the rainbow that is casting on the wall a little bit. That tube is great. Or I also have the sugar tube, which is my favorite. And this is more of a bronze color. And the stuff that you get out of this is just absolutely gorgeous. And I'll show you guys some of the images that you can get with this one. But they're all just, they're nothing special. They're just plastic tubes. And that's kind of the best part is we make a lot of our own tubes. So actually, so you see the circle. Now, there's kind of a misnomer a little bit with how you make these. So a lot of the time what people will do is they'll make this big arm motion like this to try to make a circle, and it gets wonky and it doesn't look good. So the other thing that's really important is first, you always start down. because if you look in this image here, you don't see the beginning and end of this circle because I'm using the model to hide the beginning and end so it looks perfect. And then if you want a really clean circle, you use your wrist to allow it to rotate. And that is what allows you to make that clean circle. So I'm going to turn this off. It's a little hard to see, but for me, I'm right-handed. So I start with my right thumb pointed down, and then I rotate to my left and let it come all the way over until it's hard to turn anymore. And sometimes this will take practice to build up the flexibility in the wrist, because sometimes it can be hard to get that. Like my elbow feels like a little tweaked right now. And then you just start again to get another circle if you want one or whatever. Something that just takes time. I would practice in the front yard for a while, and my neighbors thought I was crazy, but you know, whatever. I got to get the practice in. So that is kind of how that is made. And then I'll show you how. I'll keep this a little big here. So we have doors. Doors are pretty easy. You're just going to do a simple keep the flashlight in here and bring it down from top to bottom. We have, I call them Christmas trees. What their actual name is, who knows? But you just basically start at the bottom and you kind of like make a V motion or a fan, and you slowly bring it up. Then we have a candle. Pretty sure this is what Eric calls it, and it's simply over here, and then you bring this up at a 45. We have swipes. This is what I call them. I don't know what their name is, but I start up here at a 45 to me. I bring it down, switch to the opposite 45, bring it down again, and bring it down again. Fans are pretty similar to kind of what we talked about. You just, and then you bring that down and you bring that down. And I know I'm going quick through these, but it's just to kind of show you an idea of each thing. Ribbons, you kind of just run across and make a shape. Just like another idea on a ribbon. Then we have circles with what I call flares, and it's simply circle, and then you just do this motion. And then you turn the flashlight off if you want another one, and then you turn it on again and you go the other way. And you can see a lot of the time when you're light painting, you're going to get like some fun reflections like this. What's interesting about this though, is that this river was moving, right? So it's fascinating. It says I'm running with a tube behind her, right? Is that because the light is hitting the water only at certain points, normally in a long exposure, you would see it become milky. But because the light's only hitting it for a fraction of a second, it's freezing it. So it doesn't look like it's running, which I think is fascinating. And now this is important for why you have the strobe. If you have a constant strobe on your flashlight, you'll get something like this. And this is just with a basic circle. But if it wasn't a constant strobe, you might not get the same kind of light bars that are consistent. And if that's what you want, then that's great. But I love it when it just looks clean. And that's what you can get with one strobe. This is just an arc using that same technique. And then if you have a flashlight on strobe and then one on constant, so you have one flashlight on this end and then another flashlight on this end, or if you're using a T12 instead of a T8, this is a T8 tube. There's also bigger ones that are T12s, and you can put two flashlights in the bottom. You can get a look like this, where you'll get a mix of the two, which I think looks really nice. So this is a little different though. So this tube was made by a friend, and those gaps in it are made between of toilet paper rolls and paper towel rolls. And this is blocking the light. So you're gonna get some stripes in your shape, which I think looks super cool and I absolutely love. It creates like an almost 3D effect. Like if you look up here, like that just looks so cool. And this is a real person, by the way, it's not a statue. As you can see, they moved here. And this is just a circle with the same thing. You can just see the really, really cool effect. Another example of what you can do with tubes and just getting some stripes. Now this tube is interesting because it's literally made with rainbow spandex that I scotch taped to a T12. And I don't know if I have it on me. I do actually. So this is it right here. Zach Allen is the one that I learned this from. And so it's literally just scotch tape to this tube, this rainbow paper or spandex. Let me see if I bring this in, you can't really tell. But I promise you it's shiny. And that's what I used to make this. When it came out of camera, you didn't really see those colors. What's important with light painting is that if your flashlight is too bright, it's going to drown out all that color and you won't be able to recover it later. So when I shot this, I was shooting it like I want to say it was like f8, f9. And that allowed me to get enough light, but the raw of this, you don't really see any color. And then once I brought up that saturation, all that color came out. So it's important to know that depending on what your f-stop is, it's going to change the amount of color that you'll get. So this is with the sugar tube that I showed you earlier. And you can just see that like really fun orange color. And then sometimes you can get like right here, you can get a really nice color too. I absolutely love that tube. It's just, oh, the colors are gorgeous. And they're just great. You also have tube caps. Tube caps will go on the end of a tube. And I have one. I have one on the end of this tube. As you can see here, all T12s, and this one's a little broken, but just to get the idea around, all T12s and T8s come with a tube cap, but they might not be, there's going to be a hole in them. Of course, we're using it for something that we're not supposed to use it for, so that's fine. But basically, tube caps are going to stop the light from coming out the end of the tube. So if you want to stop it, if you have this hole, you can just get like some black gaff. Or if you want to reflect more light to try to get a more even light in a tube, you can either put in some white toilet paper, or you can just get like a white tube cap. You might think, hey, maybe you should use a mirror and bounce it back. But interestingly enough, if you use a light meter, using toilet paper or a white substance does better than a mirror, which I thought was fascinating. So another thing you can do is you can have sparklers, which are really, really cool and can give you this kind of effect on your picture. So I just put that sparkler on the end of a tube and lit it, and you know, with a white tube, and we actually had an LED out here. She just stayed really, really still to create that, and it looks fantastic. And there's lots of different kinds of sparklers. This was with a Morning Glory, I believe. And then also when wind gets involved, you get this really cool effect with the sparkler getting thrown off, and you're getting, just looks gorgeous. Now with that, it's important that if I can find it, come here. Lighters can be a pain in the butt, especially in the wind, as they get blown out really, really easily. So what I normally like to use is I have what's called an arc lighter. And if I can find it, I will show you it. And arc lighters are all based, here we go. So this is an arc lighter. I'm going to bring it a little bigger here. Now, arc lighters are interesting because they look like a lighter, but they're all based off of electricity. So if I bring this up, you can see it has two things of power left, and it charges by USB, micro USB. And that's turning it on. I can't blow it out. It won't go out via wind. So if you need something to light sparklers, and lighters being a pain in the butt, this is fantastic. If you're around some young people, they might complain about the noise, but like, you know, I can't hear it, so I think it's fine. Another example of just adding some stuff on the end of a tube. This is just a custom yellow gel, and I put a pink feather on the end. And the light just went through to the pink feather at the end and allowed me to create that pretty color at the end of it. And this is the same thing, but with a tiny tube. So Eric also sells tiny tubes. You could also make your own. And basically, it's just a tube that you put on the end of your other tube. And this has a little bit rainbow holographic paper in it. And it looks really great. So you can always just customize and change your looks and what you're trying to play with. So, okay, I'm gonna hide me a little bit. So this, if you're gonna screenshot anything from this presentation, is this. Okay. So Eric put together this ISO to f-stop to everything chart of how he changes his settings in his camera when we go from sunset to stars and night. So this is super important. He changes his settings like every, 7 minutes, which is crazy, 6 minutes, and you can see examples of each one, which is really cool. But generally the consensus is you start at a low ISO, high f-stop, and your exposure is it's pretty quick for light painting, 1.5 seconds. And then he has his white balance, and he has 2 flashlights here because 3000 lumens is pretty nuts. So he generally will have a flashlight at the bottom and the top of the tube. And then as the night goes on, those settings kind of reverse. Your ISO is at 3200, he's at f1.4, 8 seconds, 2 seconds for the light painting, 6 seconds for the environment. And then he switched his white balance from 5200 to 3200, and he barely has his flashlight bright at all at 50 lumens. So you can see just as it goes how he's changing those settings, and it's just absolutely incredible. Again, Eric Pare just crushes it. He inspires me every day. So now we're going to get a little bit into the ambient lighting and how you light your subject. So this is just with the light bouncing off of the walls here and lighting my subject enough. It probably could be a little better, but I was like, it's pretty good for ambient light. And then we have with the light painting tools. So I did this with the light painting brushes portrait light, and the entire room was lit by only this. And I literally just brought it from the top of her and brought it down, and it lit her super even. And it also lit the rest of the environment, and it came out super nice. And because of those white walls, I needed to make sure I shot at a high f-stop so it didn't overexpose it, because they're going to bounce and reflect that light back. And here's an example of it being used in person. And it's just this tube. And I have a different version on me from a different creator, but it's just, you just scan it and you bring it down just like that. Super simple. And you can use a flashlight to power it. It's super great. Kathy, yes, I do have a list of all the items I use. I will give you guys a URL to my website. I have my entire guide of light painting on there, and it's a lot, but it's got everything, and there's a table of content, so you can like link to stuff really easily. So you can also hit people with flashes in a softbox. And so this was just done with a couple of softboxes, and I'll explain how I did these images in a little bit. That's another way to light. You can also use a strobe, which really the biggest benefit between a flashes and a strobe is that a strobe is going to allow me to be further away, so I can have more of my environment in there and still let my subject and just keep it really clean. And one of the things that people ask a lot is rear curtain sync or front. Okay, this is really up to you for most things. A lot of the time I use front curtain. It just works easier for my workflow, and I've been more successful that way. But either one will work because you just need to light your subject. Completely up to you how you want to do it, with some exceptions, and we'll get to those. So the universal connector, this is for a light painting tool. So this is I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see. So this is the universal connector. Okay, now this is for flashlights. The reason we call it universal connector is that it fits a whole bunch of flashlights. So as long as that head isn't too big, you can just attach this to anything. So for example, you can make a tool out of a Sprite bottle, and you have the universal connector on there, and the flashlight can fit in this way, and you make a tool that way. So it's really useful if you're trying to make your own tools to connect the flashlight and that tool without having to like tape it on there or something. It's just way easier. It's a great tool by lightpaintingbrushes.com. So now we're getting into light painting blades. So these are some basic wings, and those wings are made with this light painting blade. So this is a feather blade from Light Painting Brushes, and it's kind of what it looks like. It just looks like a basic kind of feather. And all I did was go back and forth, but I also had it on strobe. Okay, with these most of the wings that I make are always on strobe because it's just easier for me. And then we have wings like this, and that kind of motion, so you're going to go down and come back. And then you just step out for each one as you go, and you really just gauge where I find out where their shoulders are, and then where my steps are. And it's just practice, just like everything else. Use a little harder and they take practice, but a lot of the time what's really useful is if you're in the dark and you have that strobe on, if you move it, you can see for like in your peripherals or for a hot second where the blade was, because there's like an after image, and that'll help you guide it as well to know where you've been. We have a couple different plumes. These are some small ones. Here's a bigger one, and it's just, instead of going down like this, I'm going up and then just making that bigger or smaller. And then you can also do really big ones as well, depending on what you're trying to go for. We also have butterfly wings, which are a little different. And you can see my foot here. I did not hide myself very well, but you can get kind of this kind of look, and it's similar to other techniques. And we have the way that Jason Page does it, which is turning the flashlight on and off, which for me, that would take forever. And I don't want to wait that long. So good for him. But you can see that it's a different look here, and each blade is more unique in what you're trying to create. So we're going to get into some crowns. So all crowns that I generally do use strobe, but not always. So this crown's really easy. I'll turn this on as an example. I'm just not putting it on strobe because nobody wants to look at that. But you just start just like a tube and you rotate like that. Really, really simple. Same idea as a tube. Start behind their head and you just make one rotation. Now, this is an example of like Jason Page would do, where you turn the flashlight on and off. So you would just start and you would just go around the subject as you create it, on and off, just like that. This was made with the triangle or diamond blade. I always forget what it's called. Triple crown, same thing as a singular crown. You're just making bigger and bigger circles. So, and a lot of these, I just invented these crowns. Nobody really did these before I did. So this is what I call a spatial headdress. And I start here, and then I just have to, I use my arm to guess. And I kind of use it in increments as I move up and down to turn the blade on and off, and to kind of create as even shapes as I can. And that, again, comes with practice and really just having spatial awareness. This is another similar one, just a lot closer. And of course, you can also do light writing. Let me move my camera here. And what's interesting with this is if you're going to write, and I can guarantee you this was done in camera, you have to write backwards because the camera's going to flip it. So if I am, so right now, right, if I'm facing the camera right now as is, I would have to write backwards. If I wanted to write me, I would have to go like this and then do the M this way. M is easy because it's, you know, you can flip it either way, but E, you have to think. S's are a pain in the butt. And of course you could just flip it in Photoshop, but like, I don't know, it's just not as much fun as trying to get it in camera. And then you have stuff like this. So this is by Mass Street Art. He's an incredible calligraphist when it comes to light painting, like blows my mind. Like these are all kind of made with like custom tools. And then he used flashlights on the wall and just like angled them the right way to write out Dan, who, this is Dan Roberts right here, who I've learned a lot from. And it's just absolutely insane. This is all in camera. There's no Photoshop. That blows my mind. He's incredible. Make sure to check him out. This is his Instagram handle. So this image was made just by putting one of these on a stick. I just like took a stick, like a wooden dowel, wrapped it in gaff tape, and then taped this, put it on strobe, and then just did the same idea as you would with the crown, where I'd start higher up on that stick, and then I'd let go and just get bigger and bigger and bigger. This was around 20, 25 seconds. And we had the moonlight to light our environment. And we're at a wide angle lens. If you don't want the stars to really move much, you want to be on the widest angle you can. The more of a zoom you have in, the less time you have it before you start getting star trails. And you can even tell, like right over here, they started to move a little bit. So this is made with gels. And I basically, what you would do, I have some gels around here. So these gels, they're pretty stingy, right? They don't bend like your normal gels would. They keep their shape. So what you would do is you take two gels. Of course, these were green and blue in this image, but then you put them here and you hold and you move like this. So it allows you to get different colors as well as a mix of that white to get that effect, which I think comes out really, really nice. You can also use iridescent basket wrap. And that's what this is. I just bought this online, and you just put it on the blade and you'll get that effect. I think it looks really, really nice. And of course, you can use shrinky dinks, washable markers, light painting brushes, has some color changers you can put on the end of a blade or something, or alcoholic inks. These all work to change the color of your blade. It's really up to you. And yeah, so like here's an example of, hold on, come here. So this is a shrinky dink that I have here. And all I did was I put the bottom of this, I traced it, and then I put it in the oven. And then that makes it just the right size to fit inside of here, especially if there's the little guard here. And basically this will allow me to change the color so I can have like a red and orange or an orange and blue blade. And I don't really have to mess with the blade itself. And of course you can put tools and combos. I did this with an orange tube and then the feather blade, and you can get that effect. I think it looks pretty nice. And so it's just important that you don't have to be stuck with one tool. Now we're going to get on to light painting whips. Light painting whips are pretty fun. Again, these were mostly originally made for like flow dancers. But you can see here, you have this doohickey right here, and it's very fun. You can also hit people with it. I do that a lot sometimes. I always tell the people, I'm like, hey, if I hit you, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. But these are the kind of effects that you can get with a whip. And now we're on to fiber optics. So fiber optics are pretty much the same as a whip, but they're a little different. And the two main differences between them is you have two different kinds. So in this image, I actually used the color shine, and I had white fiber optics. And I had my camera on the ceiling, and I just did orange and then blue. And after I did one shape, this is the same person. She literally moved in the dark and then rolled over to this spot where we had determined earlier. And then we did the same thing. And that's how we made that image in one shot. So we have black fiber optics. And if I get the black fiber optics on here, you can see the light's only coming out at the end. And that's how you're getting those kind of scratches. And you just kind of go down on somebody's face like this, or up somebody's face like that. And that's how you can get that look. I definitely recommend having a pretty dark environment. And then you might want to bump that ISO as well, just to make sure you get these trails. And then you have white fiber optics, which are very similar to the bit whip that we just looked at. But instead of it being just the tips, it's the entire thing. So that is another look that you can get with these. And this is what you get. I just have these on rainbow mode because I freaking love rainbows. And it's just really, really pretty looks. And then you also have colored fiber optics, which mine are around somewhere, but more or less, they're just either blue or pink or green. And you can see like a pink one here. And I really love the colors that the pink fiber optics come out. They're a mix between pink and black fiber optics. So you'll get some color through it, but it won't be as bright. And so the queen of fiber optics is my friend Maria Sagede in Rome. And so she does these silhouettes on F11, and they just look absolutely stunning. I love her work so much. And here's some more of it. And it's so cool looking. It looks like almost like a mist or a cloud. And it's super freaking awesome. Make sure to check her out as well. And we have fiber optic wings, which are insane. So Warren Adrian Tang, he's like the master. He invented these, and he just blows me away. Like, this is in camera? That blows my mind. It's so good. And a lot of this effect is just one, black fiber optics, and it's just he'll whip. He has it on. Come on, come here. What are you doing, flashlight? There we go. He'll go here and then whip and then turn it off, and then whip, turn it off, whip, turn it off. Which is better color, color fiber optics or clear with colored flashlight? It depends on what you want. I like the flashlight here just because it allows me to just do different stuff. The most important thing sometimes is you can tell the base is pretty hot. So you might want to grab like this wrist grab and put it over it, because otherwise it can get blown out. But it really kind of comes up to you. I think they're all valid and they all have different uses. If you just want like a little bit of tinge, then you might try the colored fiber optics. But if you really want that color to come out, then I would go with the colored flashlight myself. So, and then we have L wire. You guys have probably seen L wire before. A lot of the times you can get them at Walmart, and you'll see them on like sunglasses or something of that sort in the party aisle. And L wire is not very bright. So if you're going to use L wire, you want to make sure you have a high ISO. It's pretty dim. And depending on the strength of that ISO will make them come out more or not. I find that if I have a higher ISO, like I get some decent smoke, like you can see in this one. And if you go even higher, it almost looks like graffiti almost with the look that you get. And I think it looks super cool. And you have those other strobe modes as well, which could be useful. I actually have never used it in a strobe now that I think about it, which seems crazy to me. Now, Eric Power showed me this, and this is literally an iridescent makeup bag I got from H&M. That's literally what this is. And you put a flashlight in it, not on strobe, it does not have to be on strobe. And you just move around like this, and you can get an effect like that, which I think is pretty cool that you can get this, for like $10. And this, so see how I said F5 or higher for that color? This is in reference to that rainbow tube I was talking about earlier. If it's too bright, you won't get any of this color in there, which is a real shame because the color is so nice. And of course, you can also just use a plate. You don't got to use anything fancy. We just got this plate right here. I used like something from this store called Five Below, but it's the same premise. And you just go like this around the person to get that colored effect. Super, super easy. Of course, we have LED strips, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with. I personally don't love them. They're okay, but I just don't like the way they look for most things. But that's just me personally, like still a really valid light painting tool. And then if you don't have anything, there's also your phone flashlight. There's the color flashlight app, which will allow you to get like these red and blues. You can also just bring up Instagram and create a story. And if you want to choose a color within that story, you can do that. Or you can make it black and then put in different colors of like circles in there. And then if you drag it across the screen, you'll get these like lines of color that you can use. And that's a really, really easy way to light paints with just the phone that you already have. Now the Maggie light's really cool. Okay. This is, if you want to like spend a little money and play with this thing, it's really, really versatile for what you can do. And it's a really easy way to impress clients if you want to do light painting with them. So this is what it looks like. They had a Kickstarter a few years ago now. And basically this is an LED strip in here, but it's diffused. So what you see on the screen, it's diffused so that you don't see those lines, right? Has a couple batteries you can get with, and it's pretty cool. Now, what's cool about it is you can do colors, but then you can also do gradients, which is super cool. And then you can also do wings like this, which is crazy. They have these wings programmed in there already. And basically how it works is I start my exposure, and with these wings, you can choose to say how long is this going to work. So I generally do 2 seconds, and I'll start it, and I'll go to the right. It'll play it, and then it'll end, and I go back to the center again, play it, and it will do the other side. Really, really easy way to impress clients. And you can actually tell on this left-hand image here, I did this side pretty good, but I did this side a little, I think I went too slow. So this side looks a little wonky. So that's something that you can pay attention to. And if you don't want wings, you can also like program in your own stuff. Like I got Pikachu and Charizard in here. They're just bitmaps that you see how they're sized within the file. And basically it will just play out each one bit by bit in a vertical column. And you can do that. So if you want to do Pokemon or whatever, you can use these. And it's pretty great. I think it is a really fun tool, especially if you're doing a workshop or something. It works pretty good. I don't like to use it a whole lot unless I'm kind of using it in conjunction with other things, just because it doesn't take a whole lot of skill. And if you're in the light painting community, you're like, oh, okay, I know what they use. But it really comes down to you and what you like. We have Visual Poi as well. These are really expensive though. So I think they're around a similar price to the Maggie light. And this one's just really small. Mine is somewhere. Oh, here it is right here. So you can see that this is pretty small right here. Now, you can also program these, and they have their own software. And I'm going to bring up, hopefully it has some juice. Yeah, it looks like it does. Maybe. If it doesn't, that's okay. But you can get this kind of like effect in here. Here we go. So what I can do is I can show you guys. So you don't even have to use a remote because this comes with the remote. But if I want to start, like, we'll try this. I think this is the rainbow actually. No, I turned it off. No, come back. You know what? It's okay. If I get it, we'll get it. But you can see that I have a rainbow here, which is pretty great. And then if I wanted to program in like somebody's logo or something like that, you can do that as well, which is what I did with Cash Bunny here. So I put in her logo, and we can see I have the Canadian flag that you can kind of see as I wave it around, maple leaf. So you can get that kind of cool effect that you can program in here. And that comes with its own software. It's really, it's pretty easy to use. And then you have Yongnuo YN360. You guys might have seen these. Savage has a light like this, and you can make lines like this. They're not, I mean, they're not terrible. I'm not very good with them. My friend Kirk is way better with them than I am, but this also works as a light painting tool. And it's good for just your general light as well. Get these on B&H and Amazon. So I do stuff with fire. It is very dangerous. So I'm going to let you know that right now. You got to be careful with fire. It will burn you. I've been very close a couple times. Thankfully, I had like a fire glove to protect me. So it's just wooden dowel, cotton t-shirt, and stapler. That's all it is. Really easy. Again, I learned this from Zach Gallen, who's like the master of fire stuff. And there's just a lot of fire safety. Make sure you check your state laws. Have a fire extinguisher. Have someone man that fire extinguisher at all times if you can. Have something to protect your hand, especially if you're starting down because fire travels up. Pay attention to the wind. Have that lighter fluid be really far away where you're shooting. You know, obviously don't do this intoxicated, but some people are silly and they do that. Have your model only wear natural fiber clothing like cotton. Synthetic materials will melt into the skin, and that is no good for anybody. And, you know, make sure you don't have any hair products because that can be flammable. And I generally will stand 3 feet behind my model. I don't like to get much closer. I might even be 6 feet. You can still get great stuff. I just don't want to take any risks. And when the fire stick is really starting to die down, you can either douse it with water or use a snuffer. And my snuffers that I had made for me are basically just these big PVC tubes that are like 4 feet long. And they just have caps on both ends. And I just stick it in there and kill the fire with oxygen. And I just kind of leave it in there for a bit. And of course, then clean your area. And then you can get stuff like this with all fire. This is what fire looks like in a long exposure. And it looks just absolutely incredible. It's really, really, really cool and fun, but of course, dangerous. Some more examples of fire. And steel wool. Steel wool is pretty much the same premise, but you don't have to use lighter fluid. It's just, you guys have probably seen this before. Just get a whisk and attach it to a piece of rope and put some steel wool inside. And you can make that work. And if you put in like metal shavings like aluminum or copper, you're going to get different colors. But don't use copper fluoride or any kind of liquid because it just makes the steel wool rust. So don't try that. And this kind of explained how I already did explain it. Now with 360 cameras, this is also with steel wool. You can get effects like this, which looks amazing. The only downside is that you can't really treat the raw very much. There's not a lot, for whatever reason, they're dumb. And you can't do a lot with the raw photo and keep it like this. So that's the downside, but you can get an incredible effect. And with 360 cameras, you control them by your phone. There's a lag on when you hit that remote. And kind of like I explained again, it's cool, but there's some issues with it. At least when I did this a couple of years ago. And they can be expensive, but you know, it depends on what you want to use them for, right? Now, when it comes to model clothing, I always have a dress that will hang down to their feet just to hide my feet because I don't want those to be in the photo. Of course, ambient light from the light painting tool, if you're only going to have that, white or black is recommended because otherwise any other colors you might use with that ambient light, say it's an orange tube or another color, it's going to change the color of the clothing because that's the light of the ambient. So, you know, if you have something red and you use something green, it might make it like a black, and you probably don't want that. White absorbs, black reflects. So that really just kind of helps you set the scene. You don't have to do anything fancy. Just get some rayon from like your local like a local fabric store. You can use that to make a dress. It's really, really easy. And then just have like, if I'm shooting with a woman, then they'll have like a black tank top or a white tank top, and then use rayon as a dress. This is what Eric and Ken do all the time. So that's what I do because it works. But again, like if we're using rayon, that's a synthetic material. So you don't want to use that with fire. This is an example of us using rayon and the black tank top. And you have parachute dresses, and I realize this is a very niche thing, but you can, if you have like a white or like a clear kind of parachute dress, you can light it from the bottom as well, which looks really, really cool. And when it comes to light painters, this is the meme, I understand, but use black clothes, or at the very least, if you're outside, use navy, because that is what's going to allow you to blend in the best and not get caught in the photo. Some model tips is the camera sees everything. If you move even a little bit when that light is on you, it's going to be seen. You're going to have an ogre face, and we don't want an ogre face. It's not good. If your model is going to start the exposure right before it starts, you're going to inhale your breath if the exposure is short, and if not, then slowly exhale. Pretty much anything that's longer than 2 seconds, don't choose a pose with like your arms out, you know, because even if I have my arms out like this, I'm still moving, and I'm trying not to, but I'm still moving, and that'll show up if the light hits it. And just choose a solid stance, like, you know, get grounded, or choose something you're not going to move. So like, don't be on 1 foot, or in high heels, generally, unless they're really good, I wouldn't do that either. But in a chair is also really helpful for this. Prisms are really cool. And these are some you can get off Amazon for like 20 bucks. And again, I learned these from technique from Cam, and I got this prism from my friend Karen. And you can get something like this from that exact prism. Started with the exposure, and I did we did the lighting in the lab where we were, and I did light painting around them. Then I removed it. We hit them with the flash, so that made my subjects clear, but everything else be affected. This is another thing with the same prism, I believe, and these are some of the other prism makers that you can use. So the sheet technique is pretty cool. I learned this from Jason Reinhardt. Literally, you get a white sheet, put it up on just a stand, and then you use that sheet and you color it, and you can use silhouettes. And this is with the color shine flashlight to create these little rainbow bubbles. And I just outline the person, and they just move their arms for each arm here. And then I just outline them with this as well. Looks really, really cool. You want like a fun, different effect. So I love the brocade technique. I learned this from my friend Maria, who learned it from Dan. And it's literally, so brocade, right? It's not see-through. This is a solid material. It's as solid as like the shirt I'm wearing or whatever, and it's shiny. How it works, you put it, and this doesn't have to be with brocade, right? You could have like a Snoopy blanket or something that has patterns on it. You put it on top of them, you light it with the flashlight, you take it off, you would light them again at that same speed, the same intensity, and it mixes the two exposures. So you get this blanket effect that's somewhat transparent. So if you're doing like boudoir or something like that, like this effect looks absolutely amazing. Double exposures, really, really easy to do. This is pretty easy to do. I just lit her on one side with the YN 350, and then I lit her again on the other side. She just moved to the other side. So you can do double exposures, really, really easy to do. So this is when it's important. Remember when I talk about front curtain sink versus rear curtain sink? This is when we have to use rear curtain sink. So I had a colored light on one side going rainbow. I had them move. I started my exposure and had them move as they were being exposed to that light. And then I had a flash on the other side to hit them with it. And this is all in a line, right? They're not like coming to and forth on the camera. It's all in a line. And then I hit them with the flash to freeze them at the very end, so I can still get their face. So it's really good for like dance or sports photography. It's like such a fun effect. You can also do shutter drags. This is when I did, I started here and then I moved the camera here with the lights around them. You don't use a tripod at all. Your camera's in bulb, and you're going to just hold down that trigger with your finger. You're going to hit them with that front curtain sink, then drag it and then let go. They'll be frozen, and then you might get some lights that drag with them. And generally, you know, if it's the lights are around the model, then they work better than if they're on top or something. But it's really up to you and what you want to do. You can also do this with, if you have like a flash and then you have those lights stay on like a, just the lights stay on after you hit them with that flash and you drag it, you can get that same effect. Zoom pulls or zoom pushes are, so these ones you will do on a tripod, but you're gonna hit them with that flash and then you're gonna zoom in or zoom out, and whatever lights are around them, it's going to pull or push those lights. And you can see here, it actually, I did a zoom pull, I believe, and it brought her silhouette towards me, which I think is super, super cool. And then we're almost done, I promise. We have lasers and safety. So lasers, if they hit your camera, like it might break it, it might not. So just depending on the intensity of that laser. So just don't, you know, try not to let those lasers hit those. And you create some spots. This is also includes your phone camera. This also applies to, of course, eyes, because our eyes are just more fancier cameras. So those are more important than your camera, though. Can't really replace them. And if you're going to use lasers, don't let them go off into the distance or into the sky, because they can cause problems with airplanes or somebody who accidentally looks at it, some random bystander. And if they are strong enough, they will burn through things. So like, be careful. Generally, if the laser has to be like this close to burn through something, but just be aware. And most of the stuff that you can get just like online are not that strong. But in case you do get the chance to work in a lab like this, they have lasers that are that strong, that are like 10 watts or 20 watts, and that can be crazy. The reason I was okay with this is that we have these lenses coming out and my model is blocking the lasers with her body. So those lasers are not hitting my lens. So that's why I was okay. And I just stressed to her, I'm like, hey, just don't move until I tell you can move, because I don't want my camera to die. This is another example of with lasers, but they're pointed down instead of at the camera. And what's crazy to me is that these lasers are hitting her hands. The reflected light is lighting her face like this. And then they're also creating this effect on the dress to make it look like it's on fire. And then I use the Maggie light behind her to create this fire effect. And it's absolutely crazy. This is still one of my favorite photos. I actually have a print of it in my house. I just think it's so cool. So stencils. So we're getting into really complicated stuff now, but there's just so much you can do. So of course you can do wings with stencils, right? But there's going to be some kind of limitation on how big you can do that with like the Maggie light. So what you're going to do is you're going to have a separate tripod to hold this stencil. And I have solid paper in here. I don't recommend paper anymore. We want to use instead cardboard. Now I have this frame here, okay? And I put the cardboard in this frame, and you can see that there's a little tripod thing on the bottom. And I put this cardboard in here, and the camera is going to be lined up to this cardboard here. So it's only going to expose for this part. So if I had wings, for example, what I would do is I would just, make sure we start with the wings if they were here, and that would light the wings here and nothing else. Because again, we're in the dark. Then in the dark, I will remove the stencil, and I will have if you have the same lens, you can focus those at different points. So I can get this focused, and then I switch. So I have this focus. So you might have to do a lens swap, or you just mark on your lens where the focus is. I'll use tape a lot of the time. And then you'll expose for this, and you'll get this in one shot. There's a lot you can do. What I like to do sometimes is with these, is I have inverse of both stencils. So if you want to, actually that's not the inverse, but I have the inverse of both. So if you want to color something in one color, and then you want to use another color for something else, or you want to switch out the person and have them be in the same spot, so you can have two different faces, but in the same photo, it's really, really cool. Now, of course, I talked a little bit about tripod and lens swaps. So those are crazy. We're getting in crazy town right now. This is one shot. There's no Photoshop in this. I might have cleaned it up a little bit, but like nothing. Okay. You start with a macro lens on the eye. You expose for that. Okay. Then what you have to do is in the dark, and we're on a tripod, right? Exposed for that, boom, hit it with a flash. That's what I did. Then in the dark, I switched to a different lens, a super wide that I already had focused. Then I go to another tripod that I've already set up, good to go. I set that on there. And then I had my friend Christina here. She was behind one of those desk chair protectors you put on the floor. And I just took some fiber optics. She was up against it and I painted her. We did it all in one shot to make sure that she was in her own eye, which is crazy to me, but I love it. It took a lot of time, but it came out good. We have spirographs with people. If you guys have ever seen if you've ever been to like a yoga studio, sometimes they have those little pendulum things that go in the sand and they make patterns. This is that same thing, but I did it with a person and I just had it set up on the ceiling and I swung it and I did some light painting behind them. And you get something like this. And of course you can combine light painting and gels. And I learned this kind of setup from J Kicks where you have 3 different strobes. You have 2 pinks on one side and blue in the middle. I use front curtain sync with some umbrellas, and then I used a color changing. I just used the light painting brush's color change adapter to make it pink, and a rectangle blade, and I just kind of made this spiral effect. And again, all in camera, but I thought this spiral effect came out super, super cool. Now, of course, you can add motion right to this. So I just so for each part, we did this shot a whole bunch of times. I just did a circle, and for each part, she moved just a little bit. And then you combine all of those images in Photoshop later, and you can make a GIF out of it to make this come out like that. And here are some other examples of doing that same technique. So you also have video light painting. This was done with Eric Pare's virtual ink. You can see that we have my friend Jenna here, and I just started it, and you can see that this was done on the projector screen, right? It's not on the back of the camera. And kind of like came out like this. What's really cool is if you have 2 cameras that are same body and same lens, you can actually do this with ambient light, and you can light paint with the lights on and stuff. It's very, very cool. And it's just another thing that it's another useful tool to use. This is a different version of video light painting I do with my friend Colin, where he flew this FPV drone around my friend Mia. And this was done with my phone, right? So there's this app called Photo Gear, as I realize I'm blocking the image with my screen. So on iPhone, it's completely free. And they have a video mode and a light painting mode that you can do with this. Again, just have a tripod and you can adjust focus, adjust ISO. And it's really cool that you can get video like this and get images too. I just think it's absolutely fascinating, totally free. So you have an iPhone, good to go. You don't have an iPhone, you can still do this with like After Effects, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. I don't necessarily recommend After Effects for this. Instead, you can use a program called Kdenlive. It's free software, and it has this built-in effect. You just have to make sure you have the right version of the software to get this built-in effect. And you can see me, I did this with my drone light painting, and I got this really, really cool effect. And you see these random people in the park are like birds that come through. And so it doesn't affect those, it only affects the lights, which is really, really cool. I don't know how much longer we're going, but I got a little more. Some drone light painting with models. We lit the scene and we had a circle here, and I did some tube light painting. Did this in Las Vegas. And you can also do it by attaching an LED strip on that drone and getting really, really cool effects the same way. If you don't want to use that, use your drone as the camera to shoot down. Drones can do up to an exposure of 8 seconds, and use that as your camera, shoots down. And I always have somebody man it and tell me when to start. There is a bit of a delay, but I use tubes in order to make these shapes here. And I just like took 2 tubes here and just like did that effect as I went over them. And when I did earlier, this is a platypod. You can mount this to like ceilings and stuff. So I can mount it. I use bike racks for this, mounted it to the ceiling, and allowed me to shoot down. And I used the remote trigger with my phone to see what I was seeing and just did my best to get focus. You always want to use manual focus. Otherwise, if you don't use manual focus and you use automatic, it's going to hunt for that light in the darkness. And you're always going to get a blurry photo. So you can start with automatic, get that focus, then switch it to manual as long as your subject doesn't move. And here's an example of that doing top down with the Anson and Melon and flashlight, and then this little orb connector. So we're at the end of the presentation. How can you use this? It's going to be super fun, challenge your technical skills. It's really good for any kind of session like senior portraits or something. If you want to add on something special and get them just excited about the cool things that you make. It's really good for, aerialists, pole dancers, athletes, anything like that. And if you want to do any kind of drone light painting for people, technically you're supposed to have a drone license if you're going to make money with drones. So that's just something to be aware of. But that's it for this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a lot. I am going to put the link for the guide in the Zoom chat right now. But that's it. That's it. I hope you liked it. It was a lot. If you have questions, I still got time. If you guys got time, so holler at your boy.